Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brian Hamilton.
Before we jump into the show, I just want to thank my sponsors and collaborators. 3D Network Technology, reliability is our core value. Visit www.3dnetworktechnology.com. And Genetech, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetech, that's GENETEC.com for more information. We'd also like to thank the Change Execution Group and 360 Life Transformations. Visit www.360lifetransformations.com. We'd also like to thank Canadian Security Magazine and Omnigo Software. And now, let's get into today's show. Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, and we're joined today by Brenden Kumarasamy. Brenden, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, man.
Awesome. Now, the first question I always ask everyone, and I'll get you to entertain this one for us, but who is Brenden Kumarasamy?
I guess Brenden Kumarasamy is a friend. He's a pretend basketball fan. He likes pudding and poutine, which is a fan favorite in our city. But yeah, I would just say someone who cares about other people is probably a good way of describing myself.
Awesome stuff. So you mentioned poutine and being popular in your city. Where exactly are you located?
I'm based in Montreal.
All right, so you're not close, but not too far from me. Closer than a lot of people who are listening to this conversation for sure.
Absolutely, man.
Awesome. So what is it exactly that you do? We were talking a little bit before we actually jumped into this conversation about what you were doing before this, and you left the job that you were in to pursue this passion. So what is the passion that you're pursuing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So in a nutshell, I'm the founder of MasterTalk, which is a YouTube channel I started to help the world master the art of communication and public speaking. And then outside of that, I also have a coaching practice where I coach executives on how to become the top 1% communicators in their own industry.
Awesome. So why was it that you decided to go this route and leave what you were doing before behind?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in university, Brand, what I did was these things called case competitions. Think of it like professional sports, but for nerds. So while other guys like you would watch basketball or hockey or some other sport I didn't really understand. I was like, ball, air, I don't get it. What I did instead is I had that same male aggression that most of us do, but I applied it into presentations. So for 3 years, I know you're gonna have a hard time believing me, but I did presentations competitively. So in Canada, there's this huge sport called case competitions where students go across the world and present presentations. So especially since you're Canadian, I would go up against York University, McMaster, all these different universities no one on the call really understands. And I would essentially out-present them. And the goal of that, and why most people do that, is to get jobs at an IBM, at a Deloitte, similar to most people who are listening. That was my dream, to be an executive as well at a big company. And then when I got the job, I realized that there was a lot more to my life than just, making some money. So I had the idea for MasterTalk because a lot of the people that I used to coach in university struggled with communication, but also couldn't afford a speech coach. So I started making videos outside of my work just for fun, really in my mom's basement. One thing led to another, and it turned into a business accidentally.
Nice. So when did it actually occur to you that, okay, this is something that I'm actually going to pursue as a business, and not go the executive route, but I'll help executives be better at what they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was probably 9 months into MasterTalk. So I started the YouTube channel in 2019, January.
Okay.
And I realized I could start charging people for money for services. I didn't know I could do that in like September, October. And then I realized at some point that the people who could really afford those services and wanted to invest in the communication could either expense the fee or could get a huge ROI from the investment. Executives ended up being the focus because for them, paying a couple thousands of dollars is nothing if it gets them promoted really quickly in their industry.
Absolutely. So I guess in terms of presentations, for somebody who's starting off new and they want to improve this competency. And this was something that I went through a few years ago. I was very, very nervous about public speaking. So it was something that I had to put a lot of time into. I deliberately, just through my work experience at the time, I was like, okay, can I present at the staff meeting? What do you want to talk about? So I used to talk about our instant reporting software because I was working security at the time. And ironically enough, now I work for the company that I was presenting on, and a lot of my job is doing those presentations. So it's just kind of interesting how it's kind of went full circle. But what's the advice that you're going to give to somebody who's just getting started and they want to gain that competency doing presentations, doing public speaking?
Right. So there's 73 things I could say, but I would say the most important thing to executives, I always like to tell them, since that's your audience, is the following. You are not going to get better at communication in the boardroom. I know that's very controversial, but the reason I believe that so strongly is because every presentation you're doing, you're not actually spending that much time preparing because you're rushed. You come into a Monday morning meeting, somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, Bren, you need something ready for the afternoon. You're like, okay. And then you're just getting the slides together and then you go present. Then once you present, you throw that presentation in the garbage. Somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, Bren, presentation Tuesday, let's go. It's about something completely different. Never practice. Like, okay, not the best place to learn, right? And if we think about skill development in general, whether it's in sports, whether it's learning a new instrument, cooking a new recipe, it's the same thing. Do the same recipe, do the same song in an instrument over and over and over again until it's perfect. Same thing in public speaking, but we don't apply the same principles to it. So for me, it's very simple. The number one thing that somebody can do if they're an executive is to practice what I call the random word exercise. All you got to do is pick a random word. Okay, it could be an item in your house. And you just do that for a couple of minutes a day. I'm happy to demonstrate it as well. But what this does is it changes your mindset and how you think about presentations. Because if you're scared of a boardroom meeting, of a presentation you actually have expertise in, well, if I force you to talk about avocados for 90 seconds, your mindset in that presentation at work is going to change. Because if you can talk about avocados for a couple of seconds, you could talk about anything that you know something about.
Awesome. So yeah, do you want to actually do that then? You want to demonstrate for us?
Absolutely. Pick any word.
NBA.
Sure. When I was growing up as a kid, a lot of people might think that I was a huge sports fan. And the answer is absolutely not. I was mostly into video games and walking outside and enjoying books. But the NBA has a special place in my heart for a couple of reasons. The first one is because the Toronto Raptors won the championship a few years ago, which is a big thing. But the other reason is because of mindset. There's a lot we can learn from NBA players. Whether it was the great Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, an incredible documentary everyone needs to look at, whether it's Kobe Bryant on the importance of studying the game as anything in life. Having high standards in everything that we do, these athletes teach us really important lessons, which is if you want something, only focus on being world-class at that thing. Have high standards of excellence in everything that you do. And as you kind of shoot those basketballs of life into the hoops, always ask yourself, how can we apply those lessons so that we can get the slam dunk we're looking for in our lives? And that slam dunk doesn't need to be or have anything to do with basketball. It could be having our first kid. Could be starting that new job. Could be starting that new instrument. Find the slam dunk in your life and do everything you can in your life to score. That's just a random thing.
Yeah. No, that's great. And, just to give some context as well, we were talking before we actually started recording this, and Brenden noticed my Toronto Raptors banner in the background and asked me about it. And, he was just talking about that whole experience, but he was saying he's not a sports fan at all. So that's why I threw that out there, because I knew it was something that wasn't a strong suit for him, just to really demonstrate how this works. And I think he did a great job of that. So thank you for demonstrating.
Of course, I appreciate it, man. But that's the thing I was like to tell people, and I do the exercise, they get worried. They're like, well, oh my God, I can't do it like Brenden. That's not the point. If you do the exercise 5 times a day, in a year, you'll have done the exercise almost 2,000 times. Ask yourself, how many executives in your industry are actually doing that? The answer is 0, unless they're in the programs I teach, which is a very small number. right? So you're already positioning yourself to be one of the top communicators in your industry if you only do that one little exercise.
Awesome. Now, I know earlier you were kind of talking about this, and I guess so. What you're saying is when you're actually in front of a group doing that presentation, doing that talk, it shouldn't be the first time, right? You shouldn't be using that as your opportunity to practice, not the live event.
Absolutely. I think for me, preparation is key in everything that we do. It's like Navy SEALs training. We always default to the level of our training, our level of preparation. Same thing with public speaking. If you're scared about delivering a presentation to your boss, practice delivering presentations that you have no expertise on that you have to do right away. Because if you master the avocado presentation, I don't know why I'm picking on avocados today. When you go back to your security presentation, your healthcare presentation that you've spent years understanding, because this is your business, this is your industry, those presentations will suddenly become a joke.
So what are some of the things that we can focus on to really help us through this exercise? Like it's a great exercise, but you were able to draw from a lot of things there. What helped you gain that competency?
Absolutely. The simple one that's probably going to be relevant for 95% of people listening is really just doing the exercise. Like at the beginning, what ends up happening is it sounds something like this. Let's say you gave me a tree. Like a tree is it's like a tree, it's something you can rest your head on, it's something right. So you kind of just figure out, you're like, how am I supposed to do this thing? But then after you do this 100 times, well, then you could say, well, what do trees represent? I guess they're a lot more than just something you put your head on. They're a way of resting. Trees are actual correlation with climate change. Well, actually, it's kind of like picking a fruit off a tree. And then you get these wild ideas, and then you're able to bring all of those ideas together. So one technique people can use with this exercise is whenever you think about the word, what's the first thing that comes to mind? So if I asked you really quickly, Bryn, when you gave me the word NBA, let's say I threw that back to you, you don't have to present it, but what was the first thing that came to mind when you thought of the NBA?
The first thing that came to mind when I thought of the NBA was Michael Jordan, because that's the reason I started watching basketball when I was a kid.
Right. So I had the same answer too. I actually thought of MJ right away as well. But the difference had nothing to do with watching the sport, because I don't really watch sports except the UFC. But in terms of that specific thing, what intrigues me the most about MJ, that has nothing to do with what you said, is the mindset around how MJ thinks. Mm-hmm. So that's why I brought it forward towards the end of my presentation. I focused on that. But you don't have to do that. Everyone's going to give a completely different answer. If we take 5 people from your audience and we ask them the same question, maybe the 4th person's going to go, well, I don't know, I brought my kid to an NBA game yesterday because he kept yelling at me and it was a really good time. Right? It could be that. But the point is that can you keep presenting something confidently that you have no expertise doing? At the beginning, the answer is going to be no. But what happens is when you keep practicing this, like in the programs I teach, I force them to do this 50 times a week. Like they have accountability buddies and stuff. So by week 2, they're just like, what is an avocado? An avocado. So when they go back to corporate, it's like a joke, right? So same thing. I highly recommend the reps. And then over time, you get more creative with it.
All right. So I'm going to give you a scenario. So let's pretend I'm a client who you just signed on. We've scheduled our first session for, a week out from today. But then after I hang up from you, the next call I get is that I have a presentation to do in 3 hours. So just be ready. So I frantically call you back and I say, Brenden, this is the situation. What's the advice that you're going to give me to help set myself up to be successful in that?
Yeah, I would honestly answer with, don't get tied to the outcome. Whether you do well in that presentation or not changes nothing in our lives, because it's a process, right? So basically, that's kind of what I would say in real talk. So I would give them some piece of advice. Like I would say, okay, be sure to breathe. Be sure you practice. Be sure you practice it a couple of times. But that's not really the answer I would give. That's what other people in my industry would say. But if I'm being honest, the real answer I would give that person is let the chips fall and be sure to reflect on how that presentation went so that we can reiterate it. So that in 12 weeks, when you're bulletproof, then you can go back to that presentation, look back at who you used to be and who you're going to be, because this process is going to take time. That's the honest answer I would give.
Awesome. No, I love that. I love that. Now, I guess So you said 12 weeks, you're going to be bulletproof. So is that the typical life cycle with a client, or at least that's what you have them commit to?
Yeah, so the way that I do things, which is once again different, I always like being counterintuitive in my industries. I mean, I make YouTube videos on communication. I coach C-suite executives, but I'm 25, right? So
Right.
it's everything's very counterintuitive. But the way that I think about this is the first part in anyone's journey, and somebody can take this as a lesson, is once you're convinced you can do something, anything becomes possible. But the problem with communication is most of us aren't convinced we can move the needle on anything. That's why I keep it really smart. Sorry, not smart. I keep it really small and easy. Let's start the random word exercise. Can you do that? No. After 25 times, can you do that? Oh yeah, I'm a lot better at this. Momentum. So what happens in that 12-week process is they start by doing the random word exercise. I'm literally coaching them on nothing else. Week 1, random word exercise. Week 2, random word exercise. But then after they get really confident, then we focus on the presentation structure. Okay, I'll give you a quick tip on this as well. Most people, when they practice presentations, it usually sounds something like this. Okay, they got a presentation ready for tomorrow. And then in that presentation, they just practice it. Then they get to the presentation, they ramble through the entire thing. And then at the end, they go, yeah, so thanks. Whereas the real way of doing this, the example I use in my programs, is I compare public speaking to a jigsaw puzzle. You know those puzzles you kind of used to do as a kid? I don't know if you have kids, but maybe they like do puzzles.
Yep.
So let's say I asked you a simple question. If you're working on a puzzle, which pieces would you start with first and why?
I'd always start with the outside because it gives you the structure for the rest of the puzzle.
Bingo.
And that's how I've taught my kids to do it too, for the record.
You've taught them well. Right. So the point I want to drive is, why don't we do that in public speaking? We just shove a bunch of content in there. We just present instead of just going, wait a second. How about you start with the edges first? Just present the intro 50 times, not one time, not 2 times like most execs do. Do it 50 times. So that when you look at your intro, you're going to go, wow, this is amazing. 50 times is not a big number. Your intro is like 2 minutes. This is going to take you 2 hours. Same thing with the conclusion. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Terrible movie, right? Same thing, 50 times the conclusion. Once you've done that, you'll look at yourself and go, wow, I'm really good at that public speaking thing. So same thing that I do in the program, same analogy. Feel free to just use that. Next week is like the intro. Then the week after, that's just the conclusion. Then we talk about the content. And that way you're well practiced. And then there's obviously other things, but that's the key.
Okay, awesome. Now, what does a good opening look like? I always think of what people generally do, which is, they thank people, they thank the group for the opportunity, thank them for their attentiveness, and kind of burn up a lot of that opening time just really not getting anywhere. What do you recommend as a good opening to a talk?
Absolutely. I would say in the context of executives, the problem is never the words that they say, but the way in how they say those words. So let's say you're in a corporate meeting and you're starting a sales call with the client. Usually sounds something like this. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you. My name's Brenden, and today we're going to be talking about this technical solution, how they can help your clients. Right? So it's very boring. People just don't want to be in the meeting. People are like, why, how's this guy in sales? And they're just like, he's not going to work. Whereas that's what's fun about corporate, by the way. That's why I like that segment. Because it only takes this amount of difference, like very tiny, to make the world of a difference. So I'll give you an example in how I used to start presentations at IBM. When I was selling to corporate clients, it would sound something like this. Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see you. My name is Brenden Kumarasamy. I'm a business transformation consultant at IBM, and we're very excited to be demoing the system. And if you have any questions whatsoever during this demo, feel free to let me know. It'd be my pleasure to answer it. Same words, but the energy, the way I exude that energy is dramatically different. But here is the punchline. You can't learn how to do that by staying in the boardroom, right? The way you get to this is by presenting something you actually care about outside of work. That could be basketball. How has basketball changed your life? Or a presentation on your own podcast. Why did you create it? Why does it matter to you? What are you trying to help people with? And then you present that presentation to 20 people, to 30 people, to 40 people. And by getting better at that presentation, you can then use the techniques from that presentation into the ones you have to do at work. That's the secret.
Right. And no, that's a really good point. And you brought up something too that made me maybe do some quick research here while you were talking. But you said you only have to be just a little bit different, just a little bit better to really stand out. Now, I always, and I love that analogy. The analogy I always like to make is, Usain Bolt. Everybody knows who Usain Bolt is just because of the success that he had. And when he won the gold medal in 2008, he ran his 100 meter was a 9.69. Now, do you know who came in second? I'm just asking. I don't know if I know you're not a sports fan. I didn't know this either, but I have it in front of me right now. It's Richard Thompson. You know what the difference was between the first and second?
It's probably 9.67 or something.
0.2 seconds. So yeah, he was a 9.89, 9.69 versus 9.89. So 0.2 seconds difference. But everybody knows who Usain Bolt is. I didn't know, I still don't know who Richard Thompson is. There's not even a picture of him up on the results I'm looking at right now. But that slight of a difference made him stand out. And like you said, it's that repetition, it's that practice, it's all that time that he's put in that's really made him stand out.
I'm going to steal that. I'll say that on record. That was a really good analogy.
Yeah, feel free. What's mine is yours.
It's a Canadian thing, I guess.
I guess so. No, that's awesome. Now, okay, so we touched on the opening. What about a closing?
Right. So closing would be the same thing. I would say the biggest mistake most execs make, once again, is they focus, they've lost their energy at that point. Right now, they're really, like, if they're already bad at the intro, now at the conclusion, they're panting, they're sweating, they're like life is. I think what we're looking for in a conclusion to end strongly is show leadership and direction as if your promotion was on the line in that conclusion. So there's a very big difference between executive closes like this. So yeah, great meeting, guys, and yeah, we'll see you at the next one. Versus someone who really wants it, who would say something like this: great meeting, everyone. Loved the energy, loved the contribution. Here are the 3 next steps that we should be taking after this meeting. 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, bang. Feel free to follow up with me. I'm always reachable. You can just send me a text on my phone, or you can send me an email. It'll be my pleasure to help you out with anything you need. Have a great day, everyone. Once again, nothing super creative here. I'm not telling you to talk about ice cream for 30 seconds at the end of your presentation, or talk about how you'll change the world. I'm just asking you to put in a little bit more energy, show a bit more direction, your communication, be a bit more direct, precise. And that, like you said, will make you stand out from every other executive in the company.
Right, because you've summarized everything, and now you've given people the next steps, or some call it the call to action, but you've given them some direction so they know what to do next, and you've closed it off. You thought about what you said. It's not like the example you gave earlier was like, okay, I guess I'm done now type thing. It's very structured, and it's, yeah. So I get it now. I see why you say people are bulletproof after 12 weeks with you.
Oh yeah, that's not I usually give the easy stuff in the podcast because I don't want to scare people, but
now, okay, so we talked about the opening and the closing. What do you tell people for the rest of the time in between?
Right. So let's keep it simple once again, because I know there's already a lot of info and I want people to take action from this pod. Is simple. Just ask yourself this question: what is the key idea that I want to share, that I really want to get across? And then what are the 3 things? And things could be arguments, data points, statistics, analogies, metaphors. I don't care what the tool is. What are the 3 things that will help defend your idea the most? So if you want to convince, as an example, your daughter to eat lettuce, that's a key idea. What are the 3 reasons why she? Well, if you eat lettuce, I don't know if you have a daughter, I'm just using a random example. If you eat your lettuce, you're going to get 30 minutes extra screen time. You're going to get more daddy time at the park. You're going to get X, right? The 3 reasons, that's what you use to communicate that idea. But if the idea is sell a $75 million technology product, or a 3.7 million SAP product, or a security deal to a client, those 3 things will change. And it might actually be 37 things instead of 3. But you start with the 3, you communicate them really well, then you add another 3, you add another 3, until you have all the data points that you need to get the deal across, right? So the principle The ideas change, but the principles always stay the same. It's what is your core idea and what are the best ways of defending it. And that's why, especially when you're preparing high stakes presentations, things that are in the millions of dollars, things that can really help you stand out in your career,
Right.
as an exec, you want to be preparing this stuff months in advance, because the first ideas you're going to come up with are going to suck. Right. And then over time, as you have conversations with the end user, whether it's a customer, whether it's an employee, if you're coming up with the training for them, through those conversations, you're going to be able to tweak. In the same way, I've tweaked my message in podcasting. My first interview sucked, right? Somebody would ask me, "Hey, Brenden, what do you do with clients?" I was like, "What's a client? I don't have clients." But then after 400 interviews, it's like, okay, boom, boom, boom. There isn't a question I haven't been asked yet, like that I haven't yet, like every question I've already been asked, right? So it's a lot easier for me to drill through them. And it's a process that you refine over time.
All right, so I'm going to give you another scenario. So you have your structure now. You've been given 45 minutes for a presentation, and right before the presentation, you're like, okay, we're running behind. You have a half an hour now. Now, some of the advice I've heard before, and I know this isn't the advice that you're going to give because it's terrible advice, but talk faster. What would you tell your clients in that situation? What should they be thinking?
If I'm being honest, if they did their prep correctly, it's symptom versus core issue, right? So if they're falling behind and they were giving a set time, that's their fault because they didn't practice hard enough before the actual presentation time. Right? They got to check their time. Got to make sure they're on time. If they're in that scenario and their time gets cut in half, that's a different story. And that happens a lot too. Mm-hmm. In that situation, prioritization. So what I would think about is once the presentation's done, you want to sit down with your exec team, right? The team that you're going to drill this presentation for. You want to look at that presentation and go, what are the 3 things we want to make sure that the client gets way out of this meeting? And have we communicated those 3 things? So let's say I'm speaking, and you go, "Hey, Brenden, by the way, I got to bounce. I got a Raptors game to go to, 3 minutes on the clock. What would you say?" I already know what those 3 points are. Boom, boom, boom. Right? Because I've prioritized the information, the knowledge I have. There's like hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel. But if you want my advice in 3 minutes, then boom. Okay, I have that ready before this call begins. So same thing with your presentations and your boardrooms. What are those 3 things? And generally speaking, if you're always selling the same product or you always work for the same company, those 3 things almost always tend to be the same thing throughout all of your presentations. So hopefully that helps.
No, absolutely that does. All right, I kind of want to shift gears here and ask, what can we expect from you in the future? Like, what are you working on? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, for sure. My big mission in life is to serve 1 billion lives with communication. That's why I spend 80% of my time just making my content better on YouTube. So that's probably the best place to see what I'm working on, because I'm really focused on creating communication resources that the world can learn from and get access to for free. Like, I think the next Elon Musk is a 7-year-old girl in Cambodia, and I want her to grow up watching me, learning from me, so that she can be a better communicator, unlike Elon when she's older. That's one piece. And then, of course, is the other piece where I coach executives on how to be bulletproof in their communication. There's that as well.
Awesome. Okay, now I want to kind of shift gears again, and I want you to kind of take a journey with me. I want you to think back to when you did your first YouTube video. And now, it's been a couple of years. Knowing what you know now, if you can go back, get in a time machine and go back and have a cup of coffee with you 2 years ago, what's the advice that you would give yourself?
Yeah, so I'd give 2 pieces of advice, one that's useless to the audience and one that's useful. Let's start with the useless one. The useless ones, I should have started earlier. Like, if I had started in 2017 or 2015, I'd be a whole different game with YouTube and everything, but that's life. You live with it. But I would say that the useful piece of advice I would give that I wish I'd learned at 16 instead of 19 is be insane or be the same. I find that people who do interesting things in life are often very weird. Like, don't you find it odd that I started a YouTube channel not on prank calls, not on vlogs, but on a very professional, highly produced communication training channel where I help executives, but I'm 25 and I literally sit on a mattress as I talk to you this interview. I live in my mom's basement. I don't own a car. I love Justin Bieber. I think he's amazing. How does any of this make sense? And I think that's the true sauce of life, is the people who understand that their uniqueness is the actual essence of their life, is where they can add impact to the world in a very unique way, I think those are the people who are going to thrive.
All right, awesome. Now I'll ask you, I guess, the Alexander the Great question. So with the internet having the reach that it does, say you hit your goal of impacting 1 million people very quickly, what do you move on to next? What's the new goal?
That's an interesting question, man, that not many people ask me about. And it's when I ponder myself. It goes back to Michael Jordan, right? In his documentary, that last episode, they're like, what regret do you have in life? And he said, and he literally said, it surprised the crap out of me. He said, we should have went for 7. I was like, what is he talking about? And he's like, what, 7 what? Like 7 billion? He's like, no, like 7 championships. We should have won 7, one more. I thought that was really interesting. And I think the challenge with high performers like him, and even myself in my own sport, not basketball, but in presentations, it gets really hard to goal set if you're so ahead of your competition. Because when you're 15 and you're 20, like when MJ was, you're like a killer because there's so many people who are better than you. So there's so much more people to beat and go after and get really good. But once you're at the top of the game, that's where the challenge begins. Because even if you got $1 billion, even if you date anyone you want and meet anyone you want, it's not the same thing anymore. And that's something I think about a lot. But I would say for me, the beauty of something like YouTube is I can keep chasing that cat until I'm dead, right? Because even if I get 1 million, I can go after 10, and even if I get to 10 million, and I think that's possible within my lifetime, I can go after 100 and die trying to get to 100. And I think that's the key to goal setting, is always look at people that you really admire, see what types of goals they're setting, and use that as a model to try and goal set, even if it gets harder along the way.
Right. And a sports analogy that you may not appreciate. So you just kind of move the goalposts on yourself then.
Yeah, which sucks. It's not how I motivate myself. Like I hate the whole compare yourself to yourself. I think that doesn't help most people. But hey, if it works for you, go for it. All the love to you.
Awesome stuff. Now, I guess kind of as we start to wrap up here, do you have a favorite failure? So is there something that you maybe attempted to do that didn't work out that's really benefited you today? And, could you share something along those lines?
I definitely did a lot of dumb things in my life, made a lot of dumb mistakes with MasterTalk. But I like what you said, the angle you're using with the question, like my favorite failure. I would say my favorite one, I would have to rethink this. I'm sure I can give a better answer if I had 10 more minutes, but I would say in this moment, it's probably the decision to email university professors. So when I started MasterTalk, for context, my thought process, well, look, I'm making these videos, they're free. Like at that time, I wasn't even selling anything. It was just like, here's some free videos. And I obviously still do that today. But my thought process was, well, if every Canadian university professor knows who I am, I'll easily get to 100,000 subscribers because they'll watch my YouTube videos and then just share it. And 50,000 cold emails later, not 5,000, 50,000, I got spat on the face 40,000 times. They were like, who's this loser? You're young. I don't care about your content. Okay, share it to you. I was like, and as a student, I was like, how are these teachers reacting in this way? Don't they like listen in their own class? But anyways, it was a huge hit to my ego. I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And it's something I needed to learn. And that was a great lesson for me. One, it pointed out my stupidity. Like if something doesn't work, don't keep doing it until you have 50,000 cold emails, and shift more to an audience that's more open-minded, like podcasters, right? Who are more open to those types of conversations, who are more open to actually watching the video, noticing, oh, this guy's actually not stupid, and having a conversation with them. So that was the big lesson. Don't focus on the millions who don't care. Focus on the hundreds who really do.
No, that is solid advice right there. All right. Now, what is your call to action for the healthcare security cast community?
My call to action is to figure out why communication matters to you. I think most execs miss out, even the ones that invest in communication. It's not just about your job. It's about everything you do. The way you interact with your husband, the way you interact with your wife, your kids, your family, your loved ones, your friends. It's the way that we resolve conflict, the ones we can't talk about in this episode today. It's everything that we do. So my call to action is have a clear reason. How would the world change if you were an exceptional communicator? Really spend some time reflecting in that question, not just in the lens of your career, but the lens of everything that you do. And I think if you can find a compelling answer to that, not only will it motivate you to become a better communicator, but you'll get the incredible results that it comes with.
Well, awesome. Thank you for that. Now, I guess the last thing I'll ask you is, how can we connect you? You have your YouTube channel. What are the best ways to find you?
So I would say 2 easy places. Definitely the YouTube channel is the easiest way. Just type MasterTalk in one word. You're more than happy to also connect with me on LinkedIn. I answer all my DMs.
Well, awesome. Thank you very much, Brenden. I appreciate the time, and I appreciate all of the information and advice.
Likewise, great to be on.
The Healthcare Security Cast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music and Audible, and many other platforms as well. Check out our Linktree on your computer or mobile device. And this can be found at linktree/Brian Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brian, BRINE, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brian Hamilton. Or if it's easier, send me a text at 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have or share any links you may be looking for. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care and stay safe.